Welcome to the Biblical Leadership at Work Mid-Month Deep Dive. In today's bonus episode, our guest hosts revisit one of our most popular interviews. If this quick recap inspires you, then be sure to check out the full episode for even more great insights.
You know, when your request for this deep dive into Jason Allen's life came in, I gotta say, the phrase reformed engineer, that really caught my eye.
Yeah, definitely an attention grabber.
So we've got his interview here, some background on Stryker, the company he's been with for quite a while, and something about their approach to how employees grow really stands out. So ready to unpack this.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned being interested in finding the right career fit, and honestly, Jason's story kind of throws the whole traditional career ladder idea out the window. He starts as a mechanical engineer at Stryker. They're big in medical technology, but then things get interesting.
Interesting is one way to put it. I mean, 25 years at the same company, that's impressive, but he doesn't just stay put. Engineering to HR, that's quite a jump.
Right. And that's where Stryker's way of doing things really comes in. They actually encourage people to explore different departments, find your strengths, find what you're passionate about, even if it means moving away from what you initially started with. It's about the individual, not just filling a position.
So less about climbing that ladder, more like designing your own, jungle gym of a career path.
Exactly. And it clearly worked out well. Jason's moved to HR. It wasn't just about him. That's where his leadership skills really started to come through.
Okay, but here's the real head scratcher. From HR, he ends up in sales. Of all things, and not just any sales, we're talking high-stakes medical equipment. How does that even happen?
It was actually a chance encounter. While he was in HR, he had a conversation with one of the division presidents at Stryker. This president had a sales rep who was retiring, and he saw something in Jason. Recognized his potential, but in a completely different field.
Talk about being open to the unexpected. But it makes you wonder, what did this president see? Was it just a gut feeling?
Probably a bunch of factors. Jason's background in engineering, that meant he understood the technical side, the nitty-gritty of the devices, which is huge in medical sales. But more than that, it was likely his ability to connect with people, to actually understand their needs and problem solve. Things he really honed in on in HR.
So he had this knack for bridging the gap between the technical and the human element. I can see how that would be invaluable in medical sales. You're dealing with surgeons, patients, a whole spectrum.
And that's what makes his story so interesting. He didn't just abandon his engineering brain. He applied it to something new. Service and problem solving over just making the sale.
No, that clicks with what you said about meaningful work. And speaking of, Stryker has this program, Customer in You, and it's about connecting engineers directly with the patients who benefit from their products.
Exactly. Imagine designing a hip replacement, all the details, the hours, and then actually meeting the person who can walk again because of your work.
Wow, that's got to be something else. To see the human impact firsthand, it adds a whole other dimension.
Right. And it's something Jason carries into his sales approach. It's not just selling a product.
Yeah.
It's understanding the needs of the surgeons and ultimately making patients' lives better, seeing the human at the heart of it all.
It's amazing how his career, weaves together all these different things, like his technical side and his way of connecting with people and his personal life, his family. They really take that service idea even further.
Yeah, absolutely. His wife, Sarah, she's incredible. She actually founded this nonprofit, Power Up. They focus on childhood hunger right there in their community.
When you first mentioned this deep dive, you said you were drawn to stories about people who see a need and then actually do something. This feels like it. 400 kids. That's how many Power Up helps with weekend food support.
That's a lot, isn't it? Really makes you think about how many kids are dealing with food insecurity, even in places where you might not expect it.
Yeah.
And they're really careful about how they approach it. It's a sensitive thing, a child needing help with food.
Definitely. There's a balance, right? Providing support, but not making a child feel singled out. So how does Power Up manage that?
They've got this thing, the Confidential Backpack Program. They give backpacks to kids who need them, filled with good food, kid-friendly stuff.
So it's all done discreetly. The child gets what they need without drawing attention.
Exactly. And here's another thing about Power Up. It really lines up with what you said about different perspectives. There are no strings attached. They give the food, meet that need, but they don't push any kind of religious beliefs.
Meeting people where they are, recognizing everyone's value, it's powerful. And speaking of family, Jason and Sarah have 3 kids themselves. And they adopted their daughter from Ethiopia.
Says a lot, doesn't it? They're open to different cultures, building their family on love and shared experiences.
Yeah, you can tell how much that diversity brings to their family. It just makes you think about how those early experiences might shape how their kids see the world as they grow up.
It's fascinating, right? Personal choices, like choosing adoption, they have a ripple effect. But shifting gears a bit, we've talked about Jason's success, his career, but he's also really open about the challenges he's faced. His faith, addiction, he talks about it all.
Yeah, it's a different side of him, maybe not what some would expect. Grew up in a Christian home, went to church, the whole 9 yards. But he talks about how hard it was to make his family's faith his own.
It's something a lot of people go through, especially if they are raised with a strong religious background. It's a tough journey, going from what you're taught to what you actually believe.
Totally. And for him, it wasn't easy. He's really honest about it. A broken engagement, a time in his life he calls bottoming out. And that led him back to his faith, but on his own terms, not just going through the motions.
And that's such an important difference, right? It fits with what you said about authenticity. He had to wrestle with it all, the tough questions, his doubts, and come to his own conclusions.
It's like that rock bottom thing, right?
Yeah.
Often when real growth happens. And for Jason, that's when he confronted something else, something a lot of people struggle with but don't really talk about. Pornography addiction.
Yeah. And it's tough to talk about, for sure. But the fact that he's so open about it, his own struggles, it's really powerful. He doesn't sugarcoat it, but he also makes it clear that there's hope. People can recover.
And that's where Pure Desire Ministries comes in. They're faith-based, but their approach to addiction is really interesting. Biblical principles, but also psychology. Like you said, you like those well-rounded approaches, and this seems like a great example.
Absolutely. Pure Desire gets that addiction is usually a symptom of something deeper. Trauma, relationship stuff, maybe not having healthy ways to cope. So their programs focus on getting to the root of it. Support groups, counseling, education, all to help people break free and heal.
Getting to the why, not just addressing the surface. And honestly, I think that's something we can all take away. Even if addiction isn't something we deal with personally, looking beyond the surface, trying to understand the why behind people's actions.
Exactly. It's about empathy, compassion. For ourselves, for others. And, speaking of compassion, it makes me think about Jason's leadership style. You're really interested in that. And his approach is all about humility, about serving others. It's pretty striking.
He tells a story about when he was first leading a team of supervisors. They were skeptical, like, can this engineer really lead us? And instead of acting like he had all the answers, trying to be the big boss, he asks them this question: what do I need to do to serve you? So good.
Wow. Can you imagine hearing that from your boss? It totally changes the whole power dynamic.
Right. It shows that leadership isn't about ego or being in charge. It's about empowering your team, understanding what they need to succeed, and then helping them get there.
Servant leadership at its finest. And it's not just for work. It's how you approach everything. Your family, strangers, everyone. That same attitude of service.
And that brings us to legacy, what people will remember us for. And Jason's thoughts on that really hit home for me. He doesn't care about awards or titles. He wants to be known for the relationships he built, for being present, really present, in every interaction. Not easy these days.
It's a good reminder. True success isn't about what other people see. It's about those deep connections we make with others.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, this look into Jason Allen's life, it makes you think, right, what about our legacies? What will people remember about us? The things we achieved? Or how we made them feel? Seen, heard, valued? Something to think about.